got a great show for you today, and today's topic is going to be 1031 tax deferred exchanges. It's actually a favorite topic of mine, and it's because I love saving taxes. Anybody here like paying taxes? I don't, right? So we're excited to talk to our guests today. But before we get into all of that, I also want to get a feeling from the audience right now, and I'm also giving a little bit of extra time for our latecomers to join in. But I want to get a feel for right now where you think the market is. So if you think the market is very stagnant, kind of tight right now, difficult to put transactions together, I put a 1 in the chat. If you think you're having your best year yet, things are going really, really well, put a 2 in the chat for me. I'd like to just get an idea of where it stands for you in your particular marketplace, because I think we have really the tale of 2 Southern California marketplaces right now, right? I'm broadcasting to you from our studios here in San Diego, in downtown San Diego, here in the heart of the gas lamp. And just in this little area right now, in downtown San Diego, there are 15,000, 16,000 condominiums in a 1 mile radius, right? So there's quite a bit of opportunity here just downtown. If you're looking for a condo, specifically with a view of the beautiful San Diego Bay and the Coronado Bridge, right now is a great time to buy in downtown San Diego, I got to tell you. There are some phenomenal deals right now. A lot of units are sitting right now. Many of you know my good friend Greg Newman, who has been our longtime top producer here in downtown San Diego, who normally does 160, 170 transactions a year, just an absolute powerhouse of an agent here in downtown San Diego. You've heard him speak before on this show. His unit count is down significantly, right? We're really hoping he's going to hit 100 units this year, but it has been that challenging. Now, on the other hand of it, if we jump in the bay just a few blocks away and we swim across to this great island called Coronado Island, where my partner in crime here, Christina Miller, happens to live, it is a hot, fantastic market over in Coronado Island. In fact, Molly McCain Haynes had a listing. Christina, remind me, how much was that listing? At 15 million. That was right along the bay, and it sold on the day of the broker's open. I mean, this was a spectacular piece of property, and some of these homes along the I suppose the east side of the bay, the side that faces downtown San Diego, they don't come up very often. And when this one did, it literally sold, where the negotiations began while I was at that broker's open. In fact, a lot of us from the senior leadership team were there to support Molly, and that buyer walked in that day, and they had it in escrow probably within 48 hours. And there's a lot of that is happening across Southern California, right? And so it's really, really interesting. And I really want to hear from you. I want to know what's happening on the ground. So if you don't mind typing into the chat where, what things are happening. And my good friend Scott Brown is on the call here up in Pasadena, branch manager in Pasadena. And there too, even within that city limits, there's very different product that is happening in Pasadena. I would venture to guess, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the upper end seems to be doing pretty well, and maybe the lower end might be struggling, as they're often influenced by interest rates. And so I think that's what we're seeing, is rather than borders necessarily, probably market influences is what is really driving today's market, with the interest rates being very, very volatile, the perception of those interest rates being very high relative to recent years is really what's driving that market right now for a lot of us. And so today we will, in a minute, we will talk more about how that might be affecting homeowners that are investors, people that are renting their homes or their assets. And for many of them, they may be experiencing some tightness in that rental market as well. I know there for a while, there was kind of a drive and rents were really being pushed upward. There was upward pressure on rents for a long while. And in Los Angeles, we saw a surge in the rental market as a result of the fires, especially on the upper end. And from what I understand, that is now cooled down as well. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation as it applies to investment property and some of the things that you can do or help your buyers and sellers do in order to maybe pivot some of those assets into other vehicles, maybe into other real estate assets that you may or may not be thinking about today. So I'm excited for the show today, and we'll get into it in just a minute. Okay, before I get into all of that, I want to be able to share a couple of agent service announcements, as we like to call it here. And the first one is, many of you may have received my email regarding the recent wire fraud circumstance that we are still actively managing. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of insight on that and what went down there, because I need everyone to be extra vigilant and diligent on that side of the transaction. And so here's what happened. First, we were using, or the transaction was using an outside third-party escrow and title company, meaning it was not Pickford Escrow, nor was it California Title, which are our own in-house firms that we own entirely, right? And so I'm happy to share. I'm not happy about the circumstance, but I'm happy to share that it did not happen with our team, okay? So we had an outside third-party escrow and title company. We also had a buyer who was using an open source email domain like Gmail, Yahoo, God forbid, AOL, Hotmail.com. And a lot of people use those in their everyday personal lives. And so it's completely understandable that buyers and sellers would use those personal domain email addresses for their personal use. The challenge that we have is that you have to assume, if you're using a public domain email address, any of those free services, you have to assume that your email has already been compromised. And it's not like it was in the old days where we were afraid that somebody was going to get into our system and wreak havoc and shut it down completely, although some of that still exists where they put in a virus and then it just kind of smokes your system, right? That really doesn't happen anymore. In fact, they've gotten a lot more sophisticated, the bad guys have. And what they do instead now is they get into your email account through some sort of phishing where they send you something else and they have you click on it and it downloads some software without you knowing it, downloads software onto your device. And then what it does is it creates this mirrored image of your inbox, right? So I want you to think about, I know it sounds kind of sci-fi, but I want you to think about a bad guy on another device somewhere in the world actively watching in real time your inbox. And what they're looking for in real time is they're looking for certain keywords that they can exploit. One of those keywords, or a few of those keywords, are real estate, wires, closing funds, right? Deposits. This tells the bad guys that somebody is trying to transfer money, deposits, okay, move-in money when it's dealing with leases, okay? And so they're looking for these keywords. And when they find these keywords, they quickly look at who's involved in the communications. And in this case, there was a third-party escrow company the end of their domain was, let's just call it ABC Escrow, right? Was their name. So the bad guys in real time went out and secured abcescrow.com. Now you're going to say, well, that was already secured. Well, here's what they did instead. They secured ABC Escrow, but the W, instead of it being a W, they used two V's. So it was escrow, right? Two V's at the end. And the reason that they did that is because at first glance, it looks like a W. Right? And then what they did is they scraped, because remember, they're mirroring the inbox. So they scraped the footers, right? And because of ChatGPT and Claude, I can scrape all of their emails and then tell an AI to make this email sound like these previous emails. So they can use the same tonality. They can use the same cadence. They can use everything the same way by using AI. And then all they have to do is wait for the escrow officer to say, here's your wiring instructions. And then after they've sent that, they can jump in right away, having prepared all of this in the new domain with the two V's at the end instead of the W, and resend a wire moments later. In this case, I think it was 10 or 15 minutes later, sent an email that looked exactly like the previous one and said, oh, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. Can you wire it to these numbers and these accounts instead? And the buyers, thinking this is all very, very legitimate, were like, oh, okay, no problem. And so they sent the first wire, which was $25,000. And then they sent a second wire, another $25,000 the following day. And then the final funds, which were another day, day and a half later, of $250,000 for a total of $300,000. And because it went to one of these spoofed accounts, and the buyer thought they were doing the right thing, poof, it's gone. Now, luckily, the buyers happened to follow up with the escrow company, or the escrow company followed up with the buyers. That's still a little unclear, within about 24 hours of that last wire. And we're hopeful still that there's going to be some recovery of that. But the FBI has told us that there is about 48 hours that we have at most. Really, it's more like 30 hours that we have to be notified, and for us to notify the authorities to try to do our best to reclaim those wires. Now, please understand, our agents did nothing wrong, right? And yet, this is an unfortunate circumstance. And it's not only unfortunate for the buyers, but it's also unfortunate for the sellers. And the up legs or down legs of those transactions, the listing agent, the title company, if this was a 1031 tax deferred exchange, all of that's on hold now until we either recover the money or they try to find another money source so that they can actually close the deal. So this wreaks havoc on the entire system because one bad guy got it right just one time. He was able to find that one vulnerability and cash in. So we as real estate professionals have to be right every single time on every transaction. And we have to follow a protocol, whether we're using Pickford Escrow or Cal Title or not. And I recommend and hope that you would fight for those two services on every single deal. But I realize that you can't always. But when you can't, I'm going to ask that you follow this very specific protocol, and it's in my email. If you have not seen that, please go and find it. But here it is really quickly. Always tell your buyer, never, ever, ever wire money without first confirming, no matter how confident you are about the account numbers and the wiring instructions, always call to confirm those wiring instructions direct to the source, to the receiving people, which is either going to be the escrow company or the title company. And so, as the agent, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, because sellers could be receiving their closing funds, their proceeds, I want you to instruct your clients to never, ever, ever wire without confirming. Direct to the source, picking up the phone, telling that escrow officer, that title officer, okay, I'm just confirming before I hit send and go. I want to confirm that this is correct. Okay. And never ever use any last minute emails or corrections or I'm sorry emails as the source of truth. So that's the first thing I want you to tell your clients. The next thing I want you to tell your clients is if their email addresses are any of these public domain email addresses, I want you to really recommend to them in a very strong way, recommend to them that they set up, if they don't have it already, set up two-factor authentication. That is where, in order to get into your email, you got to get a text message on your phone, right? Where you put in your username and password, and I know it's a pain. I don't like it either. But I take comfort every time I do that. I'm getting notification when somebody's trying to get into my email. So I'm not only changing my password on a regular basis, but I also have to get a text message in order to get in there. We know that you all have it set up, especially if you're using BHHS Cal email addresses, because we've set that up for you. We actually force that upon all of our users as a security measure. If you're not using that email that we've issued you, please, please, please make sure you have all of the security protocols in place today. But I really want you to help your clients as a value proposition, in addition to protecting them and protecting their money, is get them to set up two-factor authentication as well. Okay? So follow those protocols every single time with every client. Like I said at the beginning of this, the criminals only have to be right 1 out of every 100, 1 out of every 200, 1 out of 1,000. And in many cases, especially if it's in California, they're dealing with thousands, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have to be diligent and right every single time. And whenever possible, please write in Pickford Real Estate, Pickford Escrow, and or Cal Title, because they take this very seriously and they will do everything they can to protect your client and your client's money. So thank you for taking the time to listen to that today. I don't mean to scare you. I just mean to give you the tools that are necessary to serve your clients as you have always done, but in this new world of cybercrime. All right? All right, enough of that. All right, so let's transition now and let's start talking deals. Let's start talking about an opportunity to create additional transactions and helping both buyers and sellers who have investment properties with regards to a 1031 tax deferred exchange. If you have done a 1031 tax deferred exchange transaction in the past, do me a favor, put a 5 in the chat for me. And I want to invite our esteemed guest today onto the screen. And thank you all. Phil and Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, good afternoon. We are so delighted to be here with Berkshire Hathaway. Folks, we do a lot of deals with your company already. We have been speaking in your office meetings, and we have something today to help you to create more business. And this is what it is. And by the way, I want to introduce Adam Nishikawa here. He's my teammate. And I just want to, you remember that old Mel Gibson movie where he kind of fell down? I think he was in his bathroom and he hit his head against the bathtub or something. And when he woke up, all of a sudden he was hearing voices. And the voices that he was hearing were women's voices. And I think it's called What Women Think or something of that nature. Anyway, he was able to hear and understand what they were saying before they said anything. And it was an incredible gift for him that he ultimately abused a little bit. But the bottom line is that we today will let you know what your investor clients, those who own those rental properties, are thinking, because many of them will be doing 1031 exchanges. But what we put together today is the why. What are those reasons and why will they be doing it? And if you can concentrate on that, we're already telling you what they're thinking if they're thinking about selling. All you have to do is just narrow it down to one of those 10 items. And Adam and I are really thrilled to be able to share that with you today.
Outstanding. And as you can see, at least Phil wins. They both win points today because if you see that beautiful Dodger blue behind him, that alone you should give him all your business here. That alone wins, right? And then Adam here is actually here in San Diego. So that gives him another win in my book. So great, guys. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I'll let you guys take it away. I'll go off camera and join you guys in just a bit.
Thank you. Well, Adam, let's talk about this. Let's go to the next slide. And we also always know it is a disclaimer. You and I have two things in common. We don't give legal advice. We don't get tax advice. And we both, actually a third thing in common, our E&O does not cover, and neither does yours, giving legal or giving tax advice if you don't have a license. So we want to keep away from that. But that's not what we're talking about today, Adam, is it?
No, it's not.
So let's go to the next slide. Why are we here, Adam? Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so we're here because all of you have probably noticed that the average US homeownership tenure or length of ownership has gotten longer and longer every year, right? Since 2000, when it was every 4.16 years that clients would transact their primary residences, it's now over 8 years, right? And that's low rates, lots of different reasons that that's the situation, but we're here because we want you to be able to go after investors and non-owner occupied properties. And so a few statistics: 1 in 5 transactions are investment related. Not all 1031 exchanges, but there's some investment aspect to the transaction. So that's a good 20% of all transactions. So I think if you're not going after or working with investors, you're losing out on a really big part of the market. California ranks number 2 for the most investment-owned properties, behind what state? I don't know if anyone can guess what state has more investment properties in California. I'll let you put that in the chat if anyone thinks they know which state that is. And then also it's multiple commission potential. So you get potentially a sale and a purchase, or you get to refer out the purchase if they're leaving California to one of your lovely Berkshire Hathaway partners in another state. So it's a great way to grow your business and grow the company's business. And my favorite reason: investors are less emotional and more opportunity driven. It doesn't have to be feng shui. It can absolutely be just the hard numbers of what an asset performs. Cheryl Meyer is correct. It is Texas. Texas is the only state with more investment properties than California. And it's not by a big margin. It's by a small margin. So it's definitely something that's useful. Phil, any comments to add to that?
No, I'm all ready to go moving on. That we know this is the business to be in. The question is, what are those 10 reasons? So the next slide, there are several reasons, and we're going to talk about each one. Adam, you're on a roll. I'm going to let you go with the first reason. And by the way, these are not in order of usefulness in terms of this is the number one reason why investors do 1031s. There's lots of reasons, but here they are. They're not in order, but talk about this one.
Yeah, so number 1, depreciation. Phil is right. This one is one of my favorite slides to go over. I can talk and talk and talk for hours on this topic, but one of the things that stays true in real estate is that the longer you own the property and the more money you make, the more money the government takes, as Phil has said over and over and over again. And depreciation is one of those things that this chart describes as a static value, meaning that if you don't do capital improvements to the property, you are not going to get additional depreciation. It's based on basically the improved value of the property at the time it was put into service. So if you have a client, this is a very common scenario, by the way, purchased a property for $300,000 20 years ago, right? That $300,000, their CPA divided the land by the improved value of the property. And they arrived at whatever the depreciable allowance was every year. If it's residential property, it's divided over 27 and a half years. And if it's commercial property, it's over 39 years. So for a lot of investors that bought 10, 20 years ago, they only have maybe seven to $10,000 a year in tax write-offs. Meanwhile, that property has cash flows gone up, right? Rents have doubled, if not more. The property value has gone up, right? So they've got a lot more equity sitting in the property, but depreciation stays the same. So if you think about a property, if you were to go help an investor buy a $1 million investment property today, and if that CPA assigned $700,000 in depreciation to that property, they would get roughly $25,000 a year in tax write-offs through depreciation. So if that property is making them $50,000, they're only paying taxes on half of the income that that property is generating. But keep in mind what I just said. $50,000, $25,000 of write-offs. There's a lot of people today that are getting $50,000 of income, but still the $7,000 to $10,000 of write-offs from 20 years ago. And that's an important detail because a lot of investors you talk to will have ineffective depreciation and they may even be running out of depreciation. So Phil, what can investors do to, one, benefit from depreciation, and two, who can they talk to find out who these people are that are running out of depreciation?
Well, the best way to go to your California title rep and ask them for a farm package of people who own investment property. So if you want to do condos, great. You want to do single family rentals, that's great. 2 to 4, 5 units and above, literally any commercial, industrial type of property you would like of those who've owned those properties for at least 10 years or longer. And they'll give you in your farm all those ownerships, where the property is located, where they are located, and they're getting their mail, and you can be able to start sending them information. We'll talk more about the sending of information because we already have marketing letters of which we're trying to make Berkshire Hathaway compliant. So your compliance department is working on that, and hopefully they will be ready in the very, very near future. But one of the other things I'd like to point out, Adam, what happened on the 4th of July, not this year, but last year? Something got signed, and what was it? And it wasn't the Declaration of Independence.
A brand new tax bill, but just as valuable to real estate investors.
And basically what it does is, and I'll give you a personal example. I was literally today on the phone in a conference call with my tax counsel. They're now allowing for accelerated depreciation, bonus depreciation, and cost segregation. In English, this is what that means. I owed on my tax return, I told everybody it was $60,000. It was $80,000. I got more of a clarification on that. In addition to all the, not just the income, because I'm still a withholding person, but the bottom line is in additional income that I have from my rentals and whatnot. When we did this, and my CPA recommended that, then we did the cost segregation, we accelerated depreciation, we have bonus depreciation. They owe me. I owe them $60,000 to $80,000. They now owe me almost $70,000 back. This is unprecedented. The tax people are buzzing who don't know anything about real estate, about the opportunity that's out there now because of the tax bill that was passed last 4th of July. So the bottom line is, if you're trying to get your clients to think about moving, think about it again. Because if they've had that property for at least 12 or 15 years, they've already used a considerable amount of depreciation. Number two, the income's going up, which means the depreciation's not going up, which means they're paying what? More taxes on the additional rental income they're making. How do you fix that? By doing a 1031 exchange, acquiring up. And now you have so much to write off that you can actually afford the new higher loan to go into bigger properties, more doors, because it's all about the amount of front doors you have that pay you rent every single month. So the bottom line is, this depreciation thing is a big deal. We'll have those letters to you, or those postcards from Berkshire Hathaway, but take advantage of it because they're not educated and they need to read this and then go back to their tax people and say, what is this all about? What an opportunity to get a listing. Next slide.
Absolutely.
Number two, I have a couple complaints. One of them is my homeowners association fees are going up and up and up. Not too long ago, another property that I have down in Long Beach, it was $265 a month in homeowners association fees. Today, just a few years later, it's now $520 a month. I'm not the only one that's experiencing that, folks. Many of your prospects that own properties and homeowners associations, especially condos, are just saying to themselves, I'm giving too much of my income to association fees every single month. And it really bears within them because they know, because they're writing those checks and they're frustrated. And it doesn't even have to be a condo. Some of these association fees go as high as like $1,000 a month, depending on what amenities are there for the properties. So the bottom line is there are other issues, not just homeowners association fees, but there's balcony laws, especially with the condos, that is making your industry, our industry, and the people who want to sell crazy in terms of what the government is ramping up. By the way, we get calls where people say, you know what, I haven't done much of the property in all these years, and it's really showing it now. And I think the best thing to do is to sell it instead of putting a few $100,000 into the property. So I'm going to do a 1031 exchange, sell that older property, and buy into newer property that will require less deferred maintenance. Whether it's utility upgrades, even Fannie Mae lender requirements are now doubling in terms of well, not doubling, but 50% more. So instead of the reserves being at what, 10%, they're now asking them to go to 15% to make these Fannie Mae loans. Folks, it's called special assessments. It's called these people want out of these properties. Not all of them, but many of them do. What an opportunity to talk to somebody who owns a property in an HOA or at least a condo to say, you know, I need to go into something that's a little more profitable for me where I don't have these kind of monthly payments to make. Oh, by the way, I didn't even mention fire insurance. So the bottom line is great opportunity talking to them about rising costs. Anything you have to add to that, Adam?
No, just want to reiterate, we get a lot of deals through this specific reason. Whenever someone's looking at their cash flow and every year it's going down another couple $100 due to something going up in cost. I mean, it's just really compounds. So a funny thing too, I replaced my garage door opener recently, and it used to be like $200 or $300 to replace one of those little machines, and this one was like $600 to $700. Everything is just going up. Inflation on all services, electrical services, painting, all the things that investors have to deal with as maintenance on a property. It's just those have all gone up, and it's really impacting certain investors more than others. And it's just a huge driver of our business. And it's not too late to do the 1031 exchange out of certain buildings. I know it can take longer to sell those condos in certain communities, but it's definitely better than waiting for those special assessments or something to eat away your profit for the last few years, which is unfortunately a common scenario.
That's why we went out of one of the properties we owned was in a condo. We got rid of it because we knew special assessments were coming up. We did it. We were able to go into other types of properties. So it's there for you to get the listing. You just have to bring it to the forefront of what they're thinking, because guess what? The other agents are not doing that.
Hey guys, a thought came up and also a question regarding cost segregations and some carryovers in that transaction. Now, you probably don't see a whole lot of cost segregation in a typical residential, investment situation. I can't think of one time. Maybe once or twice. Well, yeah, Phil, because you're in it every day. Yeah, and maybe this is maybe we need to have you back and really dial down into cost segregation, because that is a component of that. Maybe Adam, I'll start with you. First, in 2 or 3 sentences, if you can, tell them what cost segregation is. And then the question that Caroline proposed, and I appreciate that, is can cost segregation be claimed by the new owner that was renovated prior to them buying it? So I would imagine that's over either the 5-year, 7-year, or 15-year cost segregation strategy that you might deploy.
Yeah, since Phil just did this, I'll let him tell him,
Okay, very good.
describe your CPA, what they did.
Yeah, what happened is we were able to accelerate it because of the new laws. So that means I was able to take a lot of write-off against a lot of income that made me go from I owe them this much to now they owe me this much. And it's the government created this. It's perfectly legal. It's just recently that they especially brought back the acceleration. So I would say yes, go back and talk to your CPA. If you don't have a referral, or he doesn't have a referral, she doesn't have a referral for you, we will give you a couple of people who can do this. And that's all they do is they do cost segregations. They bring out all these little items that they can itemize and then accelerate the depreciation on them quickly.
Yeah, and thank you, Cheryl, for pointing that out. Her husband, who happens to be a CPA, who's sitting near her, says that the math probably works best if it's over $1 million. That might be the case, although I suppose that there's arguments that could be made, especially if you're doing some significant hardscaping. I mean, I don't know about you. The last time I've put in a driveway, that was quite a bit of money, right? I mean, a driveway these days,
Very expensive.
is $20,000 for a new driveway, and so
More than that.
yeah, well, so it definitely can be challenging, but the question here is, and maybe this is more of a CPA question, is if I did an upgrade like a driveway and I'm attempting to apply that cost segregation to it, and then I decide to sell it, can some of that be passed on to the new buyer, was the question? Do you know? Or is that more of a CPA question? And maybe Cheryl's husband, and maybe we can get Cheryl's husband to give us some free advice here. But
Well,
what do you
yeah,
guys
remember
think?
the depreciation recapture, that when you do a 1031 exchange, you're deferring all the capital gain taxes. So
Right.
that's federal and state, and it includes depreciation recapture. So that benefit is only for the owner of the property. Now, the next buyer, they can go do their own cost segregation study or
Got
whatever
it.
they need to do for their own taxes. But yeah, so it's something that I think a lot of investors will start taking advantage of as they purchase new property that has that longer depreciation left, right? You want to be able to take
Right.
more of the depreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question, now that I think about it, is if the previous owner actually did those improvements and either the life of the depreciation or the cost segmentation straddles the disposition of the property, can that new owner then kind of pick up where they took off? And that's probably more of a tax question than it is a 1031
It's just a guess, but I think what happens is it's for that person. It's like you're taking your bases with you to the next property.
Got
Well,
it.
the new person that's coming in and is going to have the property. They've got their bases coming in, and they could take advantage of a cost segregation thing. I don't think they only do it just for one owner, especially if the owner leaves. But that's the way it works with other items. I couldn't swear to it, but I have a feeling, and I'm usually pretty right on these things, that it makes sense that person will be able to take advantage. If they get a cost study, they can go ahead and take advantage of whatever they can find.
Our guest CPA here. I leaned on him a little bit. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Cheryl, make sure you put your husband's name in there, and maybe if he's taking clients, let us know. I want to get him some business to be grateful for him offering his opinion here. It says, if you purchase the property and you pay for the improvements after the fact, that is its own separate cost, and so you won't need that segregation. So it's kind of blended in there. Brent, thank you so much for your opinion. We certainly appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Sorry to jump
I'm
in,
glad
but
you
it's
jumped in.
something
Yeah, it's
that,
exciting.
yeah. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Number 3. Next slide. There we go. Reverse exchanges. Adam, we have a problem, and the problem is that many of our clients are afraid to sell and do a delayed exchange because once they close the sale, they only have how many days to find the replacement property?
45.
45 days. That's about a month and a half. That's not a lot of time. So many of them have been doing what? To be able to still do a 1031 exchange, but not sell first. What's the option here?
Yeah, the reverse exchange has gotten a lot more popular. As you were saying, we're getting a lot of calls because, frankly, they're unable in some circumstances to sell their property before they find their their dream replacement, right? So, Phil, talk about a hybrid exchange. I think that's important.
A hybrid exchange is like if you have like a Prius car, right? And some of you have a hybrid, runs on gas, runs on electric. So what a hybrid exchange is that let's say, for example, you're selling 2 or 3 relinquished properties, and once you close the first one, all your timing is going to be off the first closing. Well, what happens is if you're unable to close the second and or the third, and you have to close your purchase, then the government will allow us to do on part of the purchase a reverse exchange for the other 2 sales that could not close beforehand, and a delayed exchange for the one that did. So we're capable of doing these hybrid exchanges. The government's been allowing it now for about 15 years or so. And hybrids are not exercised very often, but they're there for those who are trying to consolidate multiple sales into one purchase. But sometimes they'll buy a property in a reverse exchange, and then when they go to sell the relinquished property, it's sold for far more than what they anticipated. So they really bought too low. So then we can actually set up a hybrid exchange for a delayed portion from the purchase or from the sale property they have to another one. So because the first one wasn't high enough because you have to buy for equal or greater in value. So there's different ways of combining the sales of relinquished properties and purchase properties in hybrids where there's multiple properties on one or either side. And it does save a lot of deals.
Yeah, absolutely. And to put that into numbers for everyone, if you do a reverse exchange and you buy something for $500,000 and your property ends up selling for $700,000, there's an extra $200,000 you can now open a delayed exchange with on the other side to then go purchase another property. So it's just an opportunity to get creative with your 1031 exchange structures, as well as help somebody that's, in a market that is a little uncertain. Recently I had 2 downtown condos that were being sold by an investor. One of them got sold right away. The other one, still on the market, but they found their dream replacement property. They were able to close on the replacement property. And then from the close of escrow on the replacement, they had 180 days to sell that second condo. So they were able to get that done. So it's kind of a functional way to help in this current market and environment where some properties will definitely sit longer than others.
Yeah, I find, gentlemen, that this is where, in terms of the timing, not necessarily whether traditional or reverse exchanges, I find that the timing of it, meaning the 45 days to identify, so let's be really clear for the audience in case anybody doesn't really know. You have 45 days at the close or the disposition of the asset to identify a replacement property. Right. So you have to be able to say, I've identified it. Here's the address. Whether you're in escrow or not, you have to identify it and say, this is what I'm purchasing. 45 days to do that. And then you have another 180 days to close on that next asset, right? To actually close escrow, take possession, and to do all of that. That's, gentlemen, and a reverse exchange is a great solution. But I find that is where people actually begin losing money. They begin making bad decisions because they're not properly planning. Now, I want to be absolutely clear and that a reverse exchange is a solution to this timing issue. And it does cost more money. It does give you a more elbow room, more options to go and understand there's additional complexities involved in that. And I think these 2 gentlemen would be the first to tell you that the more planning you do up front, the more you can avoid these types of solutions, because they are solutions, and I'm glad they're presenting it, but they're the alternatives to what you really should be doing is, and here's the lesson I think, gentlemen, that I want everybody to take away from is they have to be exchanging into an asset that they feel confident and understand that they can either operate or hold with a lot of intelligence and strength. I've seen too many times people exchange into assets that, for a savvy investor who knew that class, could probably find the hidden profits and recapitalize and do a lot of things to be able to make that profitable. Sometimes we see this with triple net, single pad places, and this investor is always held residential, and they transfer right into it, and it becomes very, very challenging for that person, right? Does that make sense? Or they identify a little too early, and they figure out through their diligent period after the disposition that, oh my God, triple net, single pad things is really not something I have any experience in. And then they go and buy another 10 unit complex because that's all they know. And because they're 3 days from identification expiration, they make a bad decision. Does that make sense? Like I see that happening so frequently, and my CPA is probably shaking his head like, yeah, I've seen it, right? So speak to that, gentleman, a little bit, because I love these solutions, but there's solutions that were created by the industry for the primary reason that most people don't properly plan for some of these transitions. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the key to any 1031 exchange is not what you're selling.
Yeah,
why?
Exactly.
And the question is, number one, are you able to manage this asset? Number two, have you done the numbers to find out what the rate of return is going to be to you on this asset? And number three, did you consider everything that has to be done to the asset once you acquire it to get it up to snuff and up to code, especially with the way things are today with the counties?
Exactly.
I mean, they're just going to nail you. So we're going to talk about that on the other 7 items.
Yeah, because I think that you have some alternative solutions for that may take some of the less savvy investors into vehicles that may not come with all of those headaches that we're talking about. So yeah, thanks so much, gentlemen. I appreciate you allowing me to interrupt here.
No, it's great. We love it. Number 4. There you go. Passive investment. Many of our clients are, first of all, their hair looks like this. They're getting older and they don't want to manage anymore. They don't want to lose the equity and pay taxes. They really want the cash flow, because cash flow is what you need when you get older, right? Equity growth is more important as you're younger to get to that older age. And the bottom line is that they want to be able to keep it, but not have a ball and chain around their ankle in regards to the tenant and the property. So many of them are going into what we call passive investments. And Adam, there are 3 different kinds of passive investments out there. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about them?
Yeah, perfect. So this is becoming more and more a part of Phil and I's business, is helping clients understand their options with these types of investment properties. So number 1 is triple net investments. You all know those. You're going in, you're buying a corporate-backed guaranteed lease property that is going to generate a certain amount of revenue over a certain amount of years, right? It's pretty fixed. You kind of know ahead of time how good that tenant's credit is. It could be a Starbucks, it could be a Home Depot, it could be anybody, right? So those are popular, right? Those are popular. But what's gaining even more popularity is what's known as the Delaware Statutory Trust that Judy Field mentioned there in her question. She asked, can a hybrid exchange include a Delaware Statutory Trust as one of the purchase? So she's correct. You know, if you purchased for $500,000 and it ended up selling for $700,000, that extra $200,000 could go into a DST or a 721 UPREIT. The minimums are typically about $100,000, and as long as you're an accredited investor, there's no issues. So for some investors, a DST gives them the perfect way to either complete their exchange, meaning it's the second property they buy after they acquired their first property with you, or just to get them fully passive. You know, Phil and I talk to investors all the time that are just looking for ways to get out of California legal issues and evictions they've had to go through and HOA issues, and all they want is spend time with their family and their grandkids, travel, and get a direct deposit every month or quarterly. And so the Delaware Statutory Trust allows them to do that. 721 UPREIT is even more popular. As of 2025, was like 50% of all volume for alternative investments. And what that is it's basically a DST that after 2.5 years gets converted into shares or purchased by a real estate investment trust, meaning that you now own shares in a real estate investment trust. What that means is if your client put $1 million in there and they call their advisor 3 years after they've purchased this UPREIT, they could say, hey, I want to go buy a boat. I want $100,000. They're going to pay taxes on the money they take, but it is liquid, right? It is available for them to pay for a grandchild's college, pay off whatever they want to pay off. They have so much more flexibility. A DST is illiquid, right? You're holding that asset for 5 to 7 years until it rolls over, and then you decide what you want to do with the money. But the 721 UPREIT is liquid, and a pretty good return as well. Phil, you want to talk about sort of the next slide as well as kind of what our current investors are actually getting for their return on equity?
That's really good. In fact, could I go back one more time backwards? I just want to point this out. Not all these triple nets, not all DSTs, and not all 721 UPREITs are good. There's some,
Yeah, they're not all created equal, for sure.
Yeah, and the bottom line is you're dealing sometimes with a salesperson who's more interested in seeing how much you'll stick against the wall and for their sake, as opposed to your client's best interest. There are some that really care and are very good at doing the proper disclosures to be able to tell you what to expect into the future. Some will just give you the bare minimums and just to get you to go into it. I mean, we can always refer you to people. They don't do anything for us other than, I mean, we don't give a commission or anything, but we've worked with these areas for so many years that we can tell you, we know who's a little better in terms of doing the proper disclosures, listening to what your client is really looking for, and then only showing them those types of properties as opposed to which one pays more. And that's really, really important.
So this is my opportunity to plug our commercial agents, because we have a team of commercial agents here at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services California Properties that are top notch. And the majority of the people that are watching today are residential agents. And our focus today is having a conversation about mostly our agents who have clients that are renting a residential product, single family home, condos, townhouses, maybe a 2, 3, 4 units or so. That is what we're talking about today. So a lot of our residential agents don't have enough experience in the triple nets and the DSTs and the UPREITs and things like that. So this is where I'm going to take just a second here, Phil and Adam, to really suggest that all residential agents really lean on and get to know, connect with their local commercial specialist, either within their branch or there's one in a branch near you. We have some amazing commercial agents out there that if you just ran some opportunities by them, tell them that you have one particular client that is looking to depart a residential asset and move into a triple net, right? They can spot some great opportunities or some not so great opportunities and raise some questions and help you along the way. I think at the end of the day, we'd all agree that our job is to serve the buyers and sellers in our community in the most effective way possible. And sometimes going it alone as a residential agent from the disposition of that asset residential into some sort of commercial vehicle, doing that alone, while Phil and Adam will be here to help you with the exchange purposes, but they're really not here to help you analyze the next asset. I really want all of you to lean on our amazing commercial agents. If you're a commercial agent within our brokerage, put your name in the chat right now. Put your contact information. Those of you that are senior commercial specialists, please put your name in there. I want you to be recognized because I thank you for what you do for our company. All right, guys, sorry.
I've got a franchisee for Berkshire Hathaway who owns an office, and I've referred a couple of deals to him, because this guy will talk you out of something that he doesn't think is giving you a higher enough return. But he's done the analytics of the area in terms of what buildings are coming up, what is the population level, is it growing, is it going down, and he will take you out of something that he'll make more money out of and take you into something else that he'll make less money on, but he knows it's the right thing for the client, and he does a great job for your company. I've given him a couple of referrals. So
yeah, that's amazing.
It's really important, especially on the triple net, to know about that. On the DSTs, you really need the broker dealer who's really looking out for your client's needs as to whether this property is going to be a healthy property or not for them. And Adam and I know we've watched them come and we've watched them go. I've been doing this longer than most of all of you that are on this feed today. I've been in the business since 1982, beginning
Wow.
in the title business when interest rates came down all the way down to 18.5%. And today, in the last 28 years in the 1031, there are good people and not so good area. And your reputation is everything.
Phil, I was 10 and my focus was trying to get my Schwinn to sound like a motorcycle. That was my focus during that time.
I was there. And I did it with clothespins and playing cards.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I will say to everyone that's listening that if you want to secure a listing that is with a property owner, a residential property owner that has a ton of equity and they've been renting it for a long, long time, the best way to secure that listing is not only do and propose everything that you're going to do to get top dollar for them, but to have your team ready for their transition. That's going to include Phil and Adam, but it's also going to include your commercial agent, right? Your commercial professional that is going to help you with that side of it. And if you bring that team together, they're going to feel confident that you have their best interest at heart. So, yeah,
and
absolutely.
Remember, that owner does not know that these types of properties exist.
Exactly.
For the most part, they don't, especially the DST and the 721 UPREIT. What an opportunity to now make them fall in love with something that they've been dreaming about, but they didn't think was possible without paying all the taxes.
Yep.
So what an opportunity to get new business. Next slide. Cash on equity return. I love this. If you go to take a listing from someone and they say to you, well, time out. I bought the property for this and now it's worth this. I have a lot of equity in it. Why should I sell it? And number two, my rents used to be here, but now my rents are up here. So why should I sell it? And number three, if I do sell it, I'm going to have to pay higher property taxes. There's no Prop 13 anymore for this type of thing. Especially the residential. And so here's the big question. Why should they use you? What are you going to tell them? And the answer is, well, what's your rate of return?
Yeah.
And most investors have no clue what that means. So Adam, why don't we explain that on the next slide?
Yeah, so this is a simple calculation that you could help investors do. A lot of investors in our experience, they really lean on what they purchased the property for because the rent they're getting now is great compared to what they bought the property for. I regularly do consults for clients that bought their property in La Jolla for $50,000. It's just one of those things where it's like, yes, they're getting a great return for what they paid for the property, but if they're not getting a good return for what it's worth now. So just to give you an example, a client I did a consult with this weekend was telling me that her property is worth $1 million. She's making about $2,500 a month in cash flow. And what she didn't realize is that that's a pretty low return, right? That's under 4% return on that property for how much equity is parked in there. Now she is going to do a DST, right? That DST is offering 4.5%. She is almost doubling her cash flow by buying into a DST because
she's doing 4.5% of the total equity value versus the 4.5% of the value that she's exercising right now on that property, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. She's just not getting very good return. The property's worth a lot of money. Rents are a little soft right now. It's hard to rent certain properties, even if they're worth a lot of money, right? If they're in bad condition, a lot of deferred maintenance. Somebody can buy that and come in, maybe develop it or do something else with the property. And she realized that she can actually get more cash flow and she's planning on retiring and not even being in the US anymore. And so that cash flow is kind of her ticket to accomplishing her goals. And so I think it's really important to be able to do this calculation for your clients or have them go to their CPA and do this calculation. Phil sat down with the CPA to create this worksheet. And I think it's just good and eye-opening for an investor to see that their return on equity or cash on equity return is a better term for this, is pretty low compared to how much money is sitting there,
Yeah, there's a big difference between, 4.5% of $100,000 versus 4.5% of $1 million, right? Exactly. And that's, I think, the point, right? And I think that's what...
Yes, that is the point. And the point is, is that if you figure out what the equity is, the income is, the expenses,
Yeah.
and you just divide it to find out what am I getting back from my equity, considering income and expenses, what is it doing for me? If you take it to the bank, you'll get what? 2.5%, 3%, 4%. Many of these investors who've been in these buildings for 12 years, 15 years, 20 years haven't raised the rents fast enough based on the equity growth of the building. So guess what's happening? The rate of return is maintaining or going down.
Yeah.
Why? Because they can't charge enough rent. And that's why a 1031 exchange is so important. It lets you re-leverage it to another property that you can get a better rate of return. You're just some of the investors say, I don't even know why I'm keeping this property based on what I just wrote down in terms of the numbers.
Sure.
It doesn't make sense. These are all reasons to get listings.
Yes. Yes.
People how to go into something that's going to be better for them.
And this row questionnaire calculation, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that you should internalize. You should receive and connect with Phil and Adam, and they will get you this exact flow here. But this is your magic. This is your salsa on your very delicious taco, if you will, that makes your pitch very enticing, right? Like, this is not new information, but it's the relationship that you have with your client and your ability to articulate some of these things, right? I will say, though, as well, is that you need to make sure that you encourage sellers to, because part of their team in all of this process, and Brent, our CPA, who's hopefully still on the call, will appreciate this. You have to involve your CPA as well. You have to involve them, because I got to tell you, I'm going to tell you one story, Phil. Years ago, I owned a property out in El Centro. Okay, out in
you know where that is?
Imperial Valley, right? Bought it off of a builder, brand spanking new home, rented it out for 4 years. And then candidly, I just got tired of managing it that detached, right? I like being close to my investments, and I like being able to get there when I need to get there. And so I decided that I would, and the market was supporting liquidating that and disposing of that and acquiring something over here. So naturally, right? Naturally, I'm going to do a 1031 tax deferred exchange. And I did. Here's the mistake that I made. And this is not to say that Phil or Adam are not absolutely necessary, because they absolutely are in what they do in their products. But it turns out, after I filed my taxes the next year, I didn't have to spend the money in doing the 1031 tax deferred exchange, because I had some other business loss carryovers that ultimately I could have saved. I mean, it was a few $1,000s, right? And I suppose it was a hedge against a lot of tax. But had I just made my CPA a part of the front end strategy and not just the back end strategy in terms of filing the return and things like that, I may not have needed to do the 1031 exchange, right? And so the point that I'm trying to get at, and I know I've known Phil for a really, really long time, and I know that this is absolutely true about him, and I'm certain it's true about Adam, that if there's a scenario where this doesn't make sense, they're going to tell you.
That's right.
Right? That's what makes great professionals, right?
And that's what makes relationships. People can trust
100%.
And that's what life is all about, if you think about it.
100%.
And I think you should hear this. I did a continuing education, a CE class for 1,100 CPAs, and I had to ask a questionnaire every certain amount of time. And one of the questions I asked was, how often or when in the transaction do taxpayers tell you they're doing a 1031 exchange? You want to know what 45% of them said?
Never. After
the exchange has already been completed. That's
Jeez.
over half of them.
A little late.
This is one of the largest transactions they'll ever do in their lives, and they're doing it without even talking to their CPA. So
Wow.
it's wild.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Gentlemen, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. We are over. As much as I love this conversation, I want to give you guys the final word here, because this has been a very robust conversation. And put a 1 in the chat if this has been helpful for you all, because I know it has for me. So, gentlemen, what are a last couple of things, maybe the last minute or so of information you'd like to convey before we call it a day here?
Adam, why don't you start?
I mean, we didn't get to one slide that I think drives a big part of our business. And
let's go to that slide now. Let's get to it really quickly.
Yeah, let's just go to one more, I believe. One more. Sorry,
this is a good one. This is a very good one.
Helping family members. I just want everyone to know that you are allowed to 1031 exchange into property that you do rent to family members, whether that's a child that went to college out of state and now got a job there, can't afford to buy a house yet. You would like to exchange your property into that property. Alternatively, you could also trade up, right? If you sell for $500,000 and you go buy a duplex for $1 million, your family member can live in the other unit and pay no rent, right? So there are really good ways to strategize estate planning for families. And Phil and I can tell you, we work with investors that have made a lot of money. They don't necessarily need to make more money, but they do want to help their family members. And so we're seeing properties trade to help a family member at an unprecedented rate. So just keep in mind, if this is a scenario you're considering, please reach out to us. We want to help. Phil?
I have 2 sons that I would consider one of those cost centers.
Wow, there's a lot of people out there like that. And they're looking, so whether it's their niece or their nephew because they never had any children, or whether it's their own children trying to help them get into,
for sure.
Your kids can go into the market, for crying out loud. It's very expensive. What an opportunity to use your rentals to get them into this. But my last thing to say is this. Folks, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. You don't reap what you don't sow. You can't reap something you don't plant.
Right.
I mean, the bottom line is it's already the middle of August. September, October, November, December, end of year. So what can we start planting with people who already own rental properties? 15 years, 20 years or longer, when you can just start to contact them and talk with them about something like they may already be thinking about, maybe leaving the state, maybe wanting to do other things where they want to get out of management. It's a great opportunity to get business, and you can't reap what you don't sow. So we'd love to give you those things to sow, and we'll be happy to answer your clients' questions regarding the 1031. There is no obligation from either Adam or myself. We are just happy to have the relationship with you to help you get new business.
And
well,
Sam,
gentlemen, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes, my pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was a pleasure. We got to have you guys back on because there's so many other conversations that I want to have, right? I mean, I'm being a little selfish here because I'm like thinking in real time for my own strategies, right? And so I think what the next time we're on, we need to have you guys on. We have a CPA that we trust and know that often comes on to the show. We need to have more of our commercial agents on our show to start talking about some opportunities that exist out there. And I think a show with all of those components, all those moving parts, the team, if you will, is what we need to do next, right? And so let's count on that for the future. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be with us today. I'm supposed to have a quote ready for you, but I guess the quote that might be appropriate, I don't know who authored this, but buy low, sell high is the quote that I'll share with you today. And don't pay any tax on it when you do that, right? Thanks so much. Be well. Have a great afternoon.